The house felt different at 3 in the morning. Not haunted different, just empty, like a restaurant after the last customer leaves and you're stuck with the dishes. I stood in my own kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, listening to my wife Nadine giggle behind her locked office door like some teenager with her first crush. At 50, I'd learned to trust my instincts. 25 years running McKinnon's restaurant had taught me to spot trouble before it spoiled the whole batch, and right now, trouble was brewing in my own home. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, Nadine whispered into her phone, voice thick with something I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The property will be perfect for what we discussed. Property. Right. Because real estate agents always conduct business at midnight, giggling like schoolgirls. I'd been Trevor McKinnon, successful restaurateur for most of my adult life. Built my business from a single food truck to the most popular dining spot in our little New England town. But lately, I felt more like Trevor McKinnon, the husband who gets home to find his wife's jewelry scattered across the bathroom counter and her perfume lingering in rooms she claimed never to enter. The office door clicked open. I slipped back into the shadows of the hallway, watching Nadine emerge with that satisfied smile I recognized from our early marriage. She padded upstairs, phone clutched to her chest like a love letter. I waited 10 minutes, then tried the office door. Unlocked, sloppy for someone keeping secrets. Her laptop sat open on the mahogany desk I'd bought her for their 10th anniversary. The screen showed a text conversation that made my stomach drop. Sean Dorsey, my former friend, former business partner, current pain in my ass. The man who'd tried to poach my best chef 3 years ago and had been systematically underbidding my catering contracts ever since. The messages were explicit enough to make a sailor blush, but it was the business details mixed in with the bedroom talk that really caught my attention. My menu plans, my supplier contracts, my expansion ideas, all discussed like pillow talk between my wife and my competitor. Trevor? Nadine's voice drifted down from upstairs. Are you okay down there? Just checking the locks, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. You know how paranoid I get. Paranoid. That's what she'd been calling my suspicions for months. Paranoid when I noticed her working late every Tuesday. Paranoid when she started buying lingerie she never wore for me. Paranoid when our joint credit card showed charges at hotels I'd never seen. I took photos of the text conversation with my phone, then closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. 25 years of marriage, and she thought I was too stupid to notice. 25 years of building a business, and she was feeding my secrets to the competition. But here's the thing about running a restaurant. You learn patience. You learn timing. You learn that revenge, like a good sauce, is best when it's been simmering low and slow until all the flavors blend into something perfect. I climbed the stairs to find Nadine already in bed, pretending to sleep. Her breathing was too controlled, too careful. Real sleep doesn't sound so practiced. Good night, sweetheart, I whispered, kissing her forehead. She smelled like guilt and expensive perfume. Tomorrow, I'd start cooking up something special, something that would leave both Nadine and Sean with a taste they'd never forget. The next morning arrived gray and bitter, like most March days in our corner of Massachusetts. I stood in my restaurant kitchen at 5 a.m., watching my manager, Marty, prep vegetables with military precision. Ex-Army, built like a linebacker, and loyal as a golden retriever, Marty had been with me for 8 years and knew my moods better than my wife did. You look like hell, boss, he said, not looking up from his knife work. Rough night? Just thinking about some changes we need to make. I poured coffee that could strip paint and checked my phone. 3 new texts from Nadine, all variations of running errands today, don't wait up. Errands, right. What kind of changes? Marty asked, finally meeting my eyes. He had that look, the one that said he'd follow me into whatever battle I was planning. The kind that involved cleaning house. You ever notice how some people mistake kindness for weakness? Every day. But I also notice when those people get what's coming to them. He smiled grimly. What do you need? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Lois, Nadine's younger sister. Unlike Nadine, Lois had never learned to hide her feelings or sugarcoat the truth. Their relationship had been rocky since Nadine started putting on airs, as Lois called it. Coffee later? Have something you need to hear. I texted back, McKinnon's, noon. The morning rush kept me busy enough to avoid dwelling on my crumbling marriage. Regular customers, familiar faces, the comfortable rhythm of a business I'd built with my own hands. This was real. This mattered. Whatever game Nadine and Sean were playing, they weren't taking this away from me. At 11:30, I was reviewing supplier invoices when I found it, a catering contract I'd never seen, signed with my forged signature, for an event I'd never agreed to cater. The client? Dorsey Construction's annual company retreat. The price? 20% below cost. My hands shook as I called the client. Yes, they'd been contacted by Mrs. McKinnon, who'd assured them that her husband was eager to build a relationship with Mr. Dorsey's company. Yes, they'd already put down a deposit. I hung up and stared at the contract. Nadine had access to my business files, my signature stamps, my entire operation. How long had she been sabotaging me from the inside? Boss? Marty appeared in the doorway. Your sister-in-law's here. Lois walked in looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. At 45, she still dressed like the small-town teacher she was. Sensible shoes, conservative skirt, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. But her eyes held the same fire that had made her the terror of the local school board. Trevor, we need to talk. I poured her coffee and waited. Lois had never been one for small talk. I saw Nadine yesterday at the old Morrison property on Elm Street. You know, the one that burned last year? I knew it. Half-renovated Victorian, been on the market forever after a kitchen fire gutted the first floor. She wasn't alone. Sean Dorsey? Lois nodded. They were close, very close. And Trevor, they weren't looking at real estate. How close? Close enough that I drove around the block 3 times before I believed what I was seeing. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry. I know you two have been having problems, but I hoped... How long have you known? Suspected for months. Known for sure since yesterday. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Nadine's car parked behind the Morrison property, Sean's truck beside it. I took this at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. What kind of real estate business happens in a burned-out house? The kind that involves my wife and my former friend screwing me in more ways than one. There's more, Lois continued. Sean's engaged, has been for 6 months. Some woman from Boston, rich family, connections. Word is, the wedding's planned for June. So Sean was playing both ends, screwing my wife and planning to marry someone else, using Nadine for information and entertainment while building his future with a woman who could advance his social status. Does Nadine know about the engagement? I don't think so. She talks about Sean like he's going to leave his current life for her. She's always been naive about men. Naive. That was one word for it. After Lois left, I sat in my empty restaurant, staring at the forged contract and thinking about timing. In the kitchen, timing was everything. Add the garlic too early, it burns. Too late, it doesn't release its flavor. But get it right, and it transforms the entire dish. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, to cancel the catering contract. Breach of contract fees be damned. Second, to my lawyer about changing some passwords and access codes. Third, to a private investigator I'd used when I suspected employees of theft. By closing time, I had a plan. Not just for catching them, but for serving them something they'd never forget. Marty stayed late to help with inventory, and I filled him in on the basics. His reaction was exactly what I expected. What do you need me to do? For now, just keep your eyes open. And Marty, this stays between us? Goes without saying, boss. But when you're ready to move, you let me know. I drove home through streets I'd known my entire adult life, past houses where I'd catered weddings and anniversary parties, past the high school where I'd met Nadine 30 years ago. She'd been beautiful then, ambitious, but not cruel. Somewhere along the way, she'd decided that what we'd built together wasn't enough. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Nadine's car was gone. More errands, no doubt. I let myself in and went straight to her office. Time to see what other surprises my loving wife had in store for me. The office gave up its secrets like a guilty conscience. Hidden in a file marked property taxes were hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and a second phone I'd never seen before. The phone was password protected, but Nadine had always been predictable. Our anniversary date got me right in. The text history made my coffee taste like acid. Months of messages between Nadine and Sean, starting professional and quickly turning personal. But it was the recent conversations that made me freeze. Sean, your husband's expansion plans are genius. Too bad he won't get the permits. Nadine, I made sure the application had the wrong zoning codes. Should delay him at least 6 months. Sean, you're incredible. Can't wait to celebrate properly. Nadine, the Morrison place at 2, I have the key. So she wasn't just cheating, she was actively sabotaging my business. Every permit delay, every bureaucratic mix-up, every unfortunate coincidence that had plagued my expansion plans. My own wife had been working against me for months. I photographed everything, then put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Let her think her secrets were safe a little longer. The next morning, I called Detective Ray Price. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd known each other since high school, and he owed me a favor from when I'd catered his daughter's wedding at cost. Trevor McKinnon. Been a while. Ray, I need some advice. Hypothetically speaking, if someone was using fraudulent documents to interfere with business permits, what kind of trouble would they be looking at? Hypothetically? Fraud, conspiracy, maybe RICO if it's part of a pattern. Why someone giving you trouble? Just curious. Thanks, Ray. I hung up feeling better. Not that I planned to involve the police, this was personal, but it was good to know I had options. At 10 a.m., I drove to the Morrison property. The Victorian sat on a corner lot, its blackened windows like empty eyes. The for sale sign showed Nadine's real estate company, but I knew she wasn't the listing agent. She was just using it as her private playground. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, Sean's truck pulled into the back alley. 5 minutes later, Nadine's BMW followed. I gave them 10 minutes to get comfortable, then walked around to the back of the house. The rear door was propped open with a brick. I could hear voices from the second floor, Nadine's laugh, Sean's deeper rumble. I pulled out my phone and started recording as I climbed the creaky stairs. Told you, he's completely clueless, Nadine was saying. Still thinks I'm working late at the office. What about when he finds out about the permits? By then it won't matter. Your bid for the waterfront project will be approved, and his expansion will go nowhere. He'll have to sell the restaurant just to pay the lawyers. I reached the landing and peered around the corner. They were in what used to be the master bedroom. Nadine perched on a makeshift table made from sawhorses and plywood. Sean stood between her legs, his hands on her waist. And after that? Sean asked. After that, we can be together properly. No more sneaking around. Sean's expression shifted slightly. Nadine, we need to talk about that. About what? About us. About the future. He stepped back, suddenly uncomfortable. Things are complicated right now. I kept recording, sensing something important was about to happen. What's complicated? You said you were tired of your current situation. I am, but... Sean ran his hands through his hair. Look, there are business considerations. My company is about to go public, and my investors expect a certain image. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Patient. Nadine's face went pale. Patient? Trevor, I've been destroying my marriage for you. I've been sabotaging my husband's business, lying to everyone I know, and you want me to be patient? It's not that simple. Are you seeing someone else? The silence stretched long enough to answer the question. Who is she? Nadine's voice was quiet. It doesn't matter. Who is she? Her name is Victoria. We're engaged. I almost felt sorry for Nadine as the truth hit her. Almost. Engaged? The word came out strangled. For how long? 6 months. 6 months. Nadine slid off the table, her face cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that might have been grief. You've been engaged for 6 months, and you've been sleeping with me and using me to destroy my husband's business? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Sean? Explain it to me. Sean had the grace to look ashamed. You're married, Nadine. I never promised you anything. You snake. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. You lying, using snake. Nadine, wait. But she was already gone, her heels clattering down the stairs. A moment later, I heard her car door slam and tires squeal on pavement. Sean stood alone in the ruined bedroom, looking like a man who just realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Not because he'd hurt Nadine, because he'd lost his inside source. I slipped back down the stairs and out the rear door before he could see me. I had everything I needed, and more than I'd hoped for. Nadine and Sean's alliance was cracking. Now I just had to decide how to use that crack to bring down the whole rotten structure. Back at the restaurant, I found Marty in the kitchen, prepping for the lunch rush. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. Turns out my wife's boyfriend is a bigger bastard than she realized. Trouble in paradise? The worst kind, and I'm about to make it so much worse. The lunch rush gave me time to think. Every order I expedited, every table I checked, every familiar face that smiled and thanked me for another great meal, it all reminded me what I was fighting for. This wasn't just about Nadine's betrayal or Sean's sabotage. This was about everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, everything they thought they could take from me. At 3 p.m., Erica Walsh walked into my restaurant. 28, blonde, ambitious, and Nadine's protégé at the real estate office. She looked nervous, which was unusual for someone who could sell ice to Eskimos. "Mr. McKinnon, could I talk to you for a minute?" I led her to a corner booth and poured her coffee she didn't want. "This is awkward," she began, "but I think you should know something about Nadine." "I'm listening." "She's been acting strange lately, secretive, and there have been some irregularities in her client files." "What kind of irregularities?" Erica pulled out a folder. "Properties that aren't really for sale being shown to clients. Permit applications being filed with wrong information, and money, cash payments that don't match our records." She slid a bank deposit slip across the table. "This is from last week, $5,000, cash, deposited to Nadine's personal account, but there's no record of any commission that size." "Any idea where the money came from?" "That's what worries me. I think it might be from Sean Dorsey." I kept my expression neutral. "Why would Sean Dorsey be paying my wife?" "I don't know, but he's been calling the office a lot, asking for her specifically. And yesterday, after she came back from lunch, she was crying. Really upset. She locked herself in her office for 2 hours. Yesterday, right after the scene at the Morrison property." "Erica, why are you telling me this?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I like you. And because what Nadine's doing isn't just wrong, it's illegal. If the real estate commission finds out, it'll destroy the whole agency. I'll lose my job, and so will everyone else." "What do you want me to do about it?" "I don't know, but you're her husband. Maybe you can talk to her." I almost laughed. Talk to her. If only it were that simple. "I'll see what I can do," I said instead. After Erica left, I sat in my empty restaurant and planned my next move. Nadine was vulnerable now, angry at Sean, probably scared about what she'd gotten herself into. The smart thing would be to confront her directly, try to salvage what was left of our marriage. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling vindictive. I called the permit office and spoke to Janet Morrison, the clerk who'd been helping with my expansion delays. "Janet, it's Trevor McKinnon. I want to resubmit my permit applications." "Mr. McKinnon? We've been through this. The applications you submitted had incorrect zoning classifications." "I know, but I've discovered that those applications were submitted without my knowledge, with forged signatures. I'd like to file correct applications and also report the fraud." Silence. Then, "Mr. McKinnon, are you saying someone deliberately sabotaged your permits?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, and I have proof." 2 hours later, I had new permit applications filed with correct information, and Janet had promised to expedite the process. I also had a case number for the fraud investigation and a very uncomfortable conversation ahead of me with my wife. I got home at 7 to find Nadine in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing had happened. She looked tired, older somehow, but she managed to smile when I walked in. "How was your day?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Interesting. Yours?" "The usual. Showings, paperwork, difficult clients." I watched her move around the kitchen, our kitchen, in the house I'd bought, making dinner with groceries I'd paid for, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "Nadine, we need to talk." She froze. "About what?" "About Sean Dorsey. About the Morrison property. About the permits you've been sabotaging." The wooden spoon clattered to the floor. She turned to face me, and I saw the moment she realized her game was over. "Trevor, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why my own wife has been working to destroy my business? Can you explain why you've been meeting your lover in abandoned houses? Can you explain why there's $5,000 in cash in your bank account?" Her face went white. How do I know? Because I'm not as stupid as you think I am." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the Morrison property. Her voice, clear as day, talking about destroying my expansion plans. She sank into a chair like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "How was it supposed to happen?" Sean said, "He said if we could delay your expansion, give his company time to establish itself in the market, then we could all coexist. He said it would be better for everyone." "Better for everyone except me." "You don't understand. Your expansion would have put him out of business." "So instead, you decided to put me out of business?" She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I love him, Trevor." 4 words. 25 years of marriage, and it came down to 4 words. "Do you?" Because he's engaged to someone else. Has been for 6 months. The look on her face told me she already knew. "He told me today." "And?" "And he said it was just business. That she has connections he needs." "So where does that leave you?" "I don't know." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know anything anymore." I should have felt sorry for her. Should have felt something other than the cold satisfaction that was spreading through my chest like ice water. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to fix the permit problems. You're going to return Sean's money, and you're going to decide whether you want to try to save our marriage or end it. And if I choose to end it, then we'll end it. But Nadine, if you choose to save it, this stops. All of it. Sean, the sabotage, the lies, everything. She nodded, still crying. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not the same man I was yesterday. Yesterday I trusted you. Yesterday I thought we were partners. Today I know exactly who you are. I left her sitting in the kitchen and went to my home office. I had calls to make and plans to finalize. Because regardless of what Nadine chose, Sean Dorsey was going to pay for what he'd done. And I was just getting started. 3 weeks later, I stood in the dining room of my newly expanded restaurant, watching the Friday night crowd enjoy what the local food critic had called a masterpiece of New England cuisine. The permit delays were over, the expansion was complete, and business was better than ever. Nadine had kept her word, mostly. She'd returned Sean's money and tried to repair the damage she'd done to my business applications. She'd also moved into the guest bedroom and started seeing a marriage counselor, though I hadn't decided whether to join her. But Sean Dorsey was a different story. Boss, Marty appeared at my elbow. Your guests are here. I looked toward the front entrance and smiled. Detective Ray Price walked in with his wife, followed by Janet from the permit office and her husband. Behind them came Erica Walsh and her boyfriend, and finally Lois with her latest conquest, a divorced accountant who seemed nice enough. Table 12, I told Marty, and make sure they get the good wine. This was my victory dinner, though my guests didn't know it yet. They thought they were just enjoying a free meal at the expanded McKinnons. They had no idea they were about to witness the final act of my revenge against Sean Dorsey. At 8:30, right on schedule, Sean walked through the front door. He looked terrible. Thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and the desperate look of a man whose world was falling apart. Which, if everything had gone according to plan, it was. He spotted me immediately and started walking over, ignoring the hostess who tried to seat him. "McKinnon," he said when he reached my table, "we need to talk." "Sean Dorsey," I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "What a surprise. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sean Dorsey, owner of Dorsey Construction." My guests looked up politely, but I could see the recognition in Ray Price's eyes. He knew exactly who Sean was and why I'd invited him here tonight. "Sit down, Sean. You look like you could use a drink." He remained standing. "Cut the act, Trevor. I know what you've been doing." "What I've been doing? I've been running my restaurant and minding my own business. What have you been doing?" "You know damn well what you've done. The permits, the contracts, the what? The legal business practices, the competitive bidding, the following of proper procedures." Sean's face was getting red. "You sabotaged my company." "Did I? How?" "The waterfront project?" "You mean the project where your bid was rejected because you didn't meet the environmental requirements? That's not sabotage, Sean. That's incompetence." "You had inside information." "I had publicly available information. The same information you would have had if you'd bothered to do your homework instead of relying on stolen intelligence from my wife." The mention of Nadine hit him like a physical blow. "Where is she?" "Home, where wives belong." "I need to talk to her." "No, you don't. You need to leave my restaurant before I have you thrown out." Sean looked around the dining room, suddenly aware that every conversation had stopped and every eye was on him. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Ray Price stood up from table 12. "Evening, Sean. Heard about your troubles with the state licensing board." Sean's face went pale. "What?" "Oh, you didn't know? Someone filed a complaint about fraudulent permit applications. Seems like there's evidence that Dorsey Construction has been submitting false documents for months." "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Because I've seen the evidence. Very thorough documentation. Photos, bank records, witness statements, the kind of evidence that tends to hold up in court." I watched Sean's face as the implications sank in. The fraudulent permits that Nadine had filed in my name could be traced back to information that only came from his company. The pattern of sabotage, the cash payments, the conspiracy to interfere with my business, it all pointed back to him. "You set me up," he whispered. "No, Sean. You set yourself up. I just made sure the right people knew about it. My engagement, Victoria's family will never—" "Already heard about that, too," Lois chimed in from her table. Funny how quickly rich families distance themselves from scandal. Something about protecting their reputation. Sean looked around the restaurant like a trapped animal. Every face was hostile. Every conversation was about him, Every whisper was cutting him down to size. "You've destroyed everything," he said. "Have I? Let's see. Your company is under investigation for fraud. Your fiancé has broken off the engagement. Your business licenses are suspended pending review. Your reputation in this town is shot." I stood up and faced him. "But I didn't do any of that, Sean. You did it when you decided to steal from me, sabotage me, and sleep with my wife." "She came to me?" "She came to you because you manipulated her, used her feelings to get inside information about my business, made her think you loved her while you were planning to marry someone else. You destroyed her life too." Sean's shoulders sagged. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave. Leave my restaurant, leave my town, leave my life. And if I ever see you again, if you ever contact my wife again, if you ever interfere with my business again, I'll make what happened tonight look like a friendly conversation. And if I don't," Ray Price stepped forward, "then you'll be dealing with me. And Sean, I've been looking for an excuse to arrest you for months." Sean looked around one more time, seeing nothing but hostile faces and closed doors. Then he turned and walked out of my restaurant, out of my life, and, if I was lucky, out of my town forever. The dining room stayed quiet for about 30 seconds after he left. Then someone started clapping. Someone else joined in. Within moments, the entire restaurant was applauding, and I found myself surrounded by friends and neighbors who'd watched me build my business and my life, and who just watched me defend both. "Speech," someone called out. I raised my wine glass and looked around at the faces of people who'd supported me, trusted me, and stood by me when it mattered most. "Thank you," I said. "All of you, for your friendship, your loyalty, and your business. McKinnon's isn't just my restaurant. It's our restaurant. It's part of this community, this town, this life we've all built together." I paused, thinking about Nadine at home, probably wondering how the evening had gone. Thinking about Sean, driving away from everything he'd tried to steal, thinking about the future I was going to build, with or without my wife, but definitely without my enemies. "Someone once told me that revenge is a dish best served cold," I continued, "but I've learned something different. Revenge is best served hot, fresh, and in front of everyone you care about. Because the people who try to tear you down don't deserve to do it in private. They deserve to face the consequences in public, surrounded by everyone they've disappointed." The applause started again, louder this time. I looked toward the kitchen, where Marty was grinning and giving me a thumbs up. Looked at Ray Price, who was already on his phone, probably checking on the status of Sean's investigation. Looked at Lois, who was wiping tears from her eyes and looking proud of her brother-in-law for the first time in years. And I realized that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. This was about standing up for yourself when people try to take what you've earned. This was about showing the world that kindness isn't weakness and that good people don't have to finish last. Sean Dorsey had tried to destroy my business, steal my secrets, and wreck my marriage. But in the end, all he'd done was remind me who I really was. Trevor McKinnon, owner of the best restaurant in town, surrounded by people who respected me, defended by friends who had my back, and strong enough to protect what was mine. The evening wound down slowly, with handshakes and hugs, and promises to do this again soon. By closing time, I was exhausted, but satisfied. The kind of satisfaction that comes from a job well done, a battle well fought, and a victory well earned. I drove home through familiar streets, past houses where lights were coming on and families were settling in for the night. At the end of my driveway, I sat in my car for a moment, looking at my house, my home, and thinking about what came next. Nadine was waiting in the living room when I walked in, still dressed, still awake. "How did it go?" she asked. "It's over." She nodded, understanding immediately what I meant. "What happens now?" "Now we decide whether we want to rebuild what we had or build something completely new. And Sean? Sean is gone, for good." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm sorry, Trevor, for all of it. I know you are. Can you forgive me?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She looked older, sadder, but also somehow cleaner, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try." It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't a sad ending. It was just an ending and a beginning and the promise that tomorrow would be different from today. And sometimes that's enough.